Welcome everybody, Chef Katie May here for another episode of Delicious Living, where we craft flavor, vitality, and joy through a whole food plant-based diet. So I'm teaching you how to make this cuisine, this amazing, transformative, life-changing cuisine, easy to do, sustainable, and something that you can really, really look forward to and love for a long time, for the rest of your life. That's the plan. This is not a diet. This is not a temporary fad or change you're making. This is a long-term thing we're doing here. So I want to show you how to make it fun and flavorful so that you love it. I just went live accidentally in a different broadcast, so I'm going to delete that not to confuse people. All right, so we're making ramen today. I call it ramen, but let me explain, because it's not your typical ramen, and it's a lot like a couple other dishes that you might be more familiar with. I mean, ramen is pretty familiar. Who hasn't had ramen? But in the plant-based cuisine, it's, kind of, well, I should say the health-conscious, whole food, plant-based cuisine and community. We don't typically have ramen because that's a pretty processed ingredient. Ramen noodles are, they're made with wheat usually. They could also be egg noodles, but they are generally, especially here in America and in the Western world, the ramen noodles are pre-cooked, partially pre-cooked, and so they heat up really fast, which makes them super easy to use, but it's highly processed. The wheat flour of the noodle, plus all of the spices they add, they usually have spices that are not so nutritious. Lots of salt in the little package. They're often in these little packages. You just pour it out and put it in a bowl with water, heat it up in the microwave, and you're good to go. Usually those packages, those spices have MSG. MSG, monosodium glutamate, is our neurotoxin to our body, and this is something I'm going to be doing a deep dive masterclass on in a couple weeks. So stay tuned for more information. I'll tell you all about it, going deep into that topic and why we want to avoid MSG and other things that are similar. But today, what this is about is making a healthy version of ramen that is totally sustainable to do in every which way, and we can really enjoy it. So let me know if you guys have questions about anything in the comments, but if you could put a question at the top, at the front of your question, that will help me to see what's happening there. And then also, if you want to give us a like, let me know that you enjoy this, what we're making today, and in general the content. Give me a thumbs up. That would be awesome. And if you want to hear about our weekly classes every time we go live, definitely click the little bell so you get notifications, proper notifications about when we're live. Because this show is available every week, Thursday at 5 p.m. for free, and it is now going to stay live for everyone to see. So if you want to share it with friends and family, bring more people into this world, please do so. I'd love to help and reach more people. So our noodles today, like I said, typical ramen noodles in the little package with all that processed spice. That's not what we're looking for. We want something more nourishing and a little more whole, although you can't really get whole noodles. You can't get a whole grain noodle. That whole grain has been processed into a flour. So it is partially processed, but this show is about making it really fun and sustainable long term. So I give you a little more variety. If you're looking for the optimum health and want to be flour free, I recommend checking out my Delicious Living membership, where we go deeper into the healing aspect in Garden Fresh Healing, my Wednesday show. So today, these noodles, this is a noodle that I've been using, but I'll talk about that in a minute. What I found in the store, and this is not something you're going to find in a traditional grocery store. I don't have a health food store by me, but I have a fresher market, central market, here in Poulsbo, and they have these buckwheat ramen noodles, and they have brown rice ramen noodles as well, and they're a little pricey. You know, I think it was about $5 for one of these, and there's 4 in there. So that's $1 per serving, or $1.25 per serving. But they're convenient. They're super convenient, which is one of the reasons people like ramen to begin with. See if I can rip this open. There we go. So the brown rice, if you're just going to do brown rice, it's probably not worth spending the money on this because there are a lot of brown rice noodle options. I'll talk about another one here in a minute. But if you're looking for something aside from rice noodles, buckwheat is a little bit harder to find, and often the buckwheat noodles have wheat added to them as well. Where this product, what I loved about it was that it was 100% buckwheat, so no wheat added, which is great for anyone looking to be gluten-free. And the company here, I highly suggest these if you're you know, if you're traveling or camping, something like that. If you're just an individual person, these are so convenient. The company is King Soba. I'll give you a different view here. You see this? King Soba. And these buckwheat ones. Look at these noodles. So just like a ramen pack, you have it all bound together, curly noodles, and you drop this in some hot water. You can microwave it if you want. I'm going to put it on the stove top, so we won't be using the microwave today. Okay, so this is one option to actually find a healthier ramen noodle. You can find ramen at like a Whole Foods market or health food stores where it's a little bit healthier. You know, you have a healthier noodle. It's usually still a wheat noodle. The spices would generally be healthier, no MSG added. You could often find in those types of stores. But if you don't have that, if you can get the whole noodle, because then you don't need to worry about the spices with this dish that we're making today, you can just add the seasonings we're going to add and all of the vegetables. So you don't need to worry about those spices. But if you don't have the ramen option, the actual ramen noodles, there's lots of rice noodles like I talked about. These ones are ones that I've been using, and the reason is because so many rice noodles have other ingredients added. A lot of times they have like gellan gum or carrageenan and some other things to help piece them together. But it is pretty easy to find rice noodles that are plain and just water and rice. But they don't all have the consistency or the look that we're going for with the ramen dish. So if you, who's had ramen in the comments, let me know if you've had ramen. A lot of you have, but also let me know if you've had pho, spelled P-H-O, but pronounced pho, is a Vietnamese dish. And there's another Vietnamese dish that is similar that is called bun, I actually forget the, what is it? It's called bun bo hue, but I just know the noodles, they call bun, is a term for noodle in Vietnamese. And so bun bo hue is a dish that is like pho, but there are distinct differences, primarily around the broth, what the broth is made of, either beef, pork, chicken, and some of the toppings and the type of noodle. Okay, but when it comes to eating a plant-based version of ramen, of plant-based version of pho, or of the bun bo hue, you don't have the same distinctions because you've already removed the animal product that is contributing to the broth, right? We're not using any pork, beef, or chicken. And if you're going to be gluten-free like I am, then you limit the rice or the noodles as well. So you're generally going to be going to a rice noodle or to like a buckwheat noodle here. And then you're going to be loading in the vegetables, what I recommend, loading in the vegetables. And so the difference in toppings doesn't matter quite as much either. So generally what we're making today, you can add variations as you wish, and you can think of it as a ramen or the bun bo hue or the pho, basically. And so when you're looking for a rice noodle, what I recommend is finding one that is, if you can find a vermicelli rice noodle. I don't know, hopefully I'm saying that right, vermicelli, these noodles. Let's give you a close up here. These noodles are thin. These are circular. You might find flat ones as well, but these are round, and they are a lot thinner and they're clear. They've got a clear look to them compared to the more plump wheat noodles that you might be used to, or egg noodles even. So these rice noodles are great. This is a very different product than like Tinkyata. There's lots of different brands of rice noodles that are replacements for your traditional wheat Italian pasta. These are different. So you can find them, if you don't find them in the pasta section, you can find them in the ethnic section by all the other Asian products. Okay, so let me know if you guys have any questions there. Let's see. I don't want to play that. Okay. No. Again, put that question in front of any questions you have, just so I can see that as I scroll through here. Welcome everyone. I'm just seeing all your comments. So good to see everyone today. We have, oh, I'm getting hungry just thinking about this dish that's coming. The water, if you're going to make these noodles, if you're going to make noodles like this and not an individual serving, definitely get that water going ASAP, because depending on your stovetop, your equipment, it might take some time to get to a boil. Okay, but I'm actually, since I'm doing just these little guys, you know, I'm going to do a single serving for myself. I'm just going to put this in a little bit of water on the stovetop here, right? So put some water in here. I don't have a small pan at the moment, so I'm still using this bigger pan, but it's not going to take as long to heat up. Okay. Okay. Now we're going to make our sauce. Yeah, you guys, if you haven't started making, a lot of you are saying you make similar dishes. If you haven't started making Asian food at home, and you know, hopefully you've had some Asian food outside the home to have an experience of what that's like, but don't limit yourself. Get in the kitchen and then try some, whether it's Vietnamese or Thai or Chinese. There are so many options. We can make really flavorful plant-based dishes. So we have some mushrooms here. I'm just gonna take my stems off. You can use the stems of your mushrooms, but they're a little extra fibrous, and normally that's a good thing, but I just don't like the consistency. So I'm taking off the stems, and then we're gonna cut these up. About 10 cremini mushrooms. All of these proportions for your veggies are to your liking. If you like one veggie more than another, do a little bit more of it. If you know, vice versa. So we're just going to slice these guys, and we want to get the onion and the mushroom on the stovetop right away. Or not right away, but the first. Out of all the veggies, onion and mushroom first to get the moisture from these vegetables. Oh, sorry. I've got, I think, the other screen going. Can garlic cloves be used instead of garlic paste? We'll get there, but yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to show you the product I'm talking about, and we'll talk about that. Organic millet and brown rice ramen is good, gluten-free, and vegan. Yes, definitely. Just look at the ingredients when you're buying gluten-free flours, what you think is gluten-free, because often it can say rice or buckwheat, and then in the ingredients it has rice and buckwheat, but it may also have the wheat. So you want to make sure that it doesn't have that. Okay. Got my pan here. I'm still waiting on a longer cord so we can get a camera over to the stovetop. But I'm gonna add my onion and my mushroom. Now what we're doing here, with this whole food plant-based cuisine is using the whole ingredients as much as possible. Like I said, the noodles are a little bit processed, but what I'm not adding here is any oil. So dry saute, no oil added. We're going to keep the lid on the pan to keep all that moisture in. Okay. Now, my carrots here are a little bit thicker, denser, so they don't produce the same water content as your mushroom and onion, but they actually take a little bit longer to cook because they're denser. So I like adding the carrots at the beginning with the onion and mushroom because we'll just start that cooking process and there's enough moisture from the onion and mushroom to make sure that these don't stick to the pan. Okay, as I put in, yeah, when you put question in the beginning, it's super helpful, but even more helpful if you can capitalize that question word so I can quickly see it. McDougall's have some great recipes too. You can use angel hair pasta instead of ramen, absolutely. The angel hair pasta generally is, it's a lot, I find it hard to find angel hair pasta that's gluten-free. But if you can, or if you're still having wheat, be my guest, whatever you want to do there. The difference between, I'm going to add these 1 second. Look. Okay, the difference between the ramen and the, there's 3 dishes here. The difference between the ramen and the pho is that the ramen is generally thicker noodles. So they might be wheat or they might be egg, but because we're not doing that, mine would be gluten-free, and thus it would be basically the same type of noodle I'd use for the pho. And same with the bun dish. The bun noodles would generally, depending on where you're going, but they would be a little bit thicker as well, a little bit kind of that spongy noodle. So the thanks, you guys. Any questions regarding the noodles? Let's talk about the broth. Okay, so I'm going to make our broth. We're going to start our broth here in the blender. The broth is thin for all of these dishes. Ramen, pho, and the bun. It's a thin broth, and it's a really important piece too. Actually, I didn't take my broth out of the fridge here. It's a really important piece. If you can make a homemade broth, that is best. Build it with a lot of flavor. I have to be honest, that's one area where I am looking to develop my skills and really practicing with different broths, because generally, I'm going to stir my pan here. I'll show you this guy. Stir it, you hear it. And I'm turning the heat down as well. So the broths, you want to be really flavorful, and when we're not using bones, we're not using any animal product to make that broth, it's not going to have quite as much umami unless you, well, it's not going to have the same amount of umami. But one way that we can add a lot more umami is to use a mushroom broth. Okay, so mushrooms are high in umami, really, really tasty, and this is that savory flavor. So if you want a really flavorful dish, that's one thing that's also different between these. Pho is usually a little blander. The ramen and the bun dishes are a lot more flavorful. So if you're looking for that, I would use a mushroom broth, and on my website, I have a recipe for homemade mushroom broth, and I'm going to add about a cup of the mushroom broth, and then I'm also going to add a cup of this vegetarian no chicken broth. Okay, and this is not my usual. If I have to use a broth, I usually go for Pacific brand, low sodium. which is oil-free and it has very low sodium. This one is a little bit higher in sodium, and it also has a little bit of an oil, it has some oil in it. So I usually don't buy these vegetarian non-chicken broth, but for the ramen where you want a lot more flavor, I like to use this. And this is a dish I've really been making for my family, for my parents, who love, like I mentioned previously, we're getting Chinese, and so we're trying to make more Asian dishes at home, and these are helpful for getting more of that richer flavor. But typically, I would just use water and not use broth at all in my dishes and let all the flavor come from the whole foods. So oh, I need a production assistant. We need someone to go back and forth between these cameras. So we have, I wasn't doing anything on the cutting board, so you didn't miss anything there. But these were the two broths I was talking about. This is mushroom broth and a vegetarian non-chicken broth, which doesn't have any chicken in it, just a lot of flavor. And those are just great options if you are in a time crunch, but more importantly, if you're trying to really develop a richer flavor for someone who's not eating a very clean diet. But for yourself, if you're eating pure, no oil, no salt or very little salt, I'd recommend making your own homemade broth. And you can definitely check out my recipe for the mushroom broth. It cooks up in 10 minutes in the Instant Pot. Super easy. Okay. You guys are so funny. The broth piece, okay, that's, store-bought broth, but the way we're going to make this more flavorful, because I'm only using half store-bought broth, I'm also going to add half water, like I mentioned, and then we're going to add more flavor from Whole Foods. But we're also going to add a couple other products because it's so helpful when you're cooking Asian dishes. First of all, what makes a ramen dish, like I said, a little bit more flavorful and a little bit thicker broth than pho, is that it has a little more fat, just from the animal products, whether it's the pork or beef, has a little more fat. And so we're going to use a little peanut butter instead of animal fat. You could leave this out if you wanted to. I'm going to add, this makes about 4 servings. So I'm going to add about half a cup peanut butter. By all means, you can leave this off. You can leave this out. Although I add half a cup, not all of the broth gets used. So you don't end up using all of this peanut butter, because there's, depending on the individual, if you like it really soupy or you end up not eating all of the soup, you may not consume all of the broth and thus the nut butter. Okay, I'm going to stir my pot here again. Can't wait for another camera. We have our noodles, our water's boiling for the noodles, so I'm just going to pop this in the pan. And when I can, I'll break it up, stir it, so that all of the noodles get cooked. Next up, we have the chili paste, okay? The garlic chili paste is what's in the recipe. And for a long time, I didn't buy this chili paste because it has a couple other ingredients in it, salt being one of them, that I was trying to avoid and wanted a very pure diet. And I'm so glad I did that, because it, just allowed me to reset my taste buds. And more than that, it developed my culinary skills to create flavor without salt. But for this dish and for a lot of Asian dishes, this is a great product to have. The reason I bought it a couple months ago was because I was making a video for Dr. McDougall for their new online program, and I was making one of their recipes and it called for this garlic chili paste, so I just bought it. But if you don't want to use this garlic chili paste, then you want to add in fresh chili. You could do literally a dried chili whole, I wouldn't recommend a large one, or better yet, just do a little bit of red pepper flakes and then some garlic. So whether it's a whole garlic clove you could add to the blender, or crushed garlic if that's what you have at home, any garlic and red pepper flakes, and you can add them to your liking. I'd suggest 1 large garlic clove, maybe 2, depending on how much you like it, and then about 1/4 teaspoon to 3/4 of a teaspoon of, maybe even 1 teaspoon if you really like the spice, of red pepper flakes. Okay. Yes, let me see if this has oil. I don't think that this one has any oil in it. Someone asked about a replacement, so I just talked about the replacement for these, but yes, this brand doesn't have any oil. I'll show you it. I can't even pronounce this, but I'm going to show you up close. This is the garlic chili sauce. There's no oil added. Not to say it's healthy, but it is oil free. Okay, so I'm going to turn down my pan, turn down the heat here. And I almost wish I had a little portable camera so I could just take you around the kitchen with me. I'm going to break up our noodles. Start to. I flipped. I didn't have the water covering the little noodle packet, so I flipped it so that the top gets cooked as well. All right, what else do we have here? Our lime juice. We're going to add 1 whole lime. Just here. Oh, Reba, make your own garlic chili paste. Brilliant. How long does it last? Do you add salt to your chili paste? And what peppers do you use? What peppers do you like to use in your chili paste? So, lime here. Ooh. Curry pastes are fantastic too. Also, great to find good quality brands there. So, thank you, Jessie, for that. Oh, this is so good. I can't wait till I'm creating so much, the new recipes, but more than that, building a website. We've been in transition the last couple years from websites, one getting hacked and then another just not serving. Well, we built our training platform on a new site, and then just recently we started a new site for our community, which is going really a lot slower than planned, but it's going to be so fantastic. But once my system's in place for that, I'm excited to have more time in the kitchen so I can do things like you're suggesting, the garlic chili paste from scratch and all that stuff. Next up is our tamari. Tamari is highly concentrated in sodium, so it's another product I don't use often, but I'm going to add 1 tablespoon here. If you want to do more than that, you could do 2, but you really don't need much. We have sodium and umami flavor from the tamari, but this dish has a little bit of sodium and umami flavor from the store-bought vegetable broths as well. And again, if you want to see the Garden Fresh Healing Show, that's where we get really into optimizing our food for healing. Okay, so the water we need here, we're going to add 2 cups of water. And then we'll blend it up. And on the stove top, my carrots are probably getting soft. So before we blend that, I'm going to add in my broccoli and my bell pepper to the stove. There you go. let's blend this. Now this is going to go into our saute pan with all of our vegetables. If your saute pan is not deep enough for you to hold the liquid, then just strain out your noodles and then add this broth to the noodle pan, and you can transfer all of your vegetables to that pan. Okay. If you want to avoid the soy and you want a product like Tamari, of course you could use coconut aminos, but that also is high in salt. So if you want to avoid the salt aspect, then just leave this out. But I'm not adding any tofu here or tempeh, which I love, to minimize the soy. If you wanted to, if you're fine with organic soy, tempeh and tofu would also be great here. But to leave out the soy sauce, just either replace it with coconut aminos or totally leave out that salty product. Okay, so I'm going to add this to my veggies and I'll be right back. So our noodles here, this is just our noodles. I'll show you what I've got here. They are getting soft. I'm not sure if they're quite ready yet, but you can see my noodles. So I'm just gonna pick one up with a fork. Try these. You don't want to cook, they're done. You don't want to cook them too long because they'll start to break up on you. So we're going to strain them out. Little strainer here. Pour these in the sink. Okay. Grab a bowl. Let's see. So we're using my big bowls. We're going to add some the noodles and then lots of veggies. Okay. Yeah, you could use miso as well instead of the tamari in the broth. You could use miso, and they have chickpea or other bean misos, which would work. So we have another veggie to add to our pot. We're going to add peas here. So let me put those on the stove top. And stir this again so we're getting all of our broccoli covered, cooked. Now, our dish here is going to be pretty thin. This is like a soup, but we got lots of hearty vegetables in it. So you might want a fork and a spoon at the table. Going back and forth between the two is generally what I do. And depending on the individual, you might not want to pour as much soup in there, just because some people don't like that thin consistency with all of the heartier vegetables. But if you're someone that is more familiar with this style of eating, you might actually want chopsticks to pick up all your veggies and noodles. And then you can drink the soup. These bowls they look like the 11-inch bowls. I think these are the large ones, 11-inch. And that is the brand Gina put in there. Our veggies look so good. I wanted the broccoli to go just a little bit longer, but they're really looking good. So I'm going to chop up a little bit of cilantro. Herbs are a key piece to all of these dishes. The ramen, especially the pho and the bun noodles. So I'm just going to take my cilantro out here and chop a little bit. Okay. Anything else? Anything we're forgetting? If you have a little lime, you want a little extra lime, you can serve that on the side. But I put a whole lime in there, so we should be good with the lime. All right, you guys ready? Let's put our noodles in our bowl. Yeah, toothpick for the lid. I'm still learning the Salad Master cookware. So these are our noodles. You don't want them to sit long because they'll get dried, too dry on you. We're not adding any extra oil or butter or anything. So we're just gonna pour veggies over here. You won't even be able to see these noodles, but you'll still enjoy the flavor. Proportionally, if you were eating this at a restaurant, you'd have maybe 3 times, 4 times the amount of noodles I have here, and then just a third of the amount of veggies I'm gonna add, right? So we're gonna make it the complete opposite. We have just a tiny amount of noodles, still a full serving, but not a restaurant serving size. And then we're gonna have a lot of veggies, which would be hard to get at a restaurant. So if you guys like Asian food, definitely make some at home, or continue doing so if you've already been doing that. All right, I'm gonna bring my veggies over here so you can see the full pan. Okay, let's push our cilantro to the side. Okay, and let's give you the mushroom. I put the mushroom and the chicken flavored broth in at the beginning because I wanted to, you want some sort of liquid once you have the onion and mushroom sauteed so they're tender. I love doing that first, but you don't have to do that first. But once that's done, if you want to do it, then you need some liquid to start cooking the carrots, to soften the carrots. So I usually add some liquid, whether it's the water or the broth, to the pan to cook the carrots, and then I'll make the rest of the broth, my homemade part of the broth, in the blender, okay? And let's show you a close-up here with my other screen. Can you see that? Oh, yummy. Okay. Ooh. I love all the colors. All the colors. So, get a big soup spoon to serve this. You can see how thin it is. So this, although I put a lot of peanut butter in it, this isn't like a peanut sauce. You know, this is peanut, a little bit of peanut fat flavor for our broth instead of an animal-based broth. The mushrooms and peanut butters. You could use any nut butter if you wanted to use something else, or just leave out the nuts altogether. So, like I said, big bowl of vegetables. That'd be good to start with. And then I'll pick up some extra broth here. How good does that look? Yeah, you got to keep the noodles separate. Don't cook the noodles with the rest of the dish. Okay? Don't cook your noodles with the dish because they'll get way too soggy too fast. And they'll start to break on you. It's fine if they break. They're going to break on you when you're eating them and everything, but you just don't want to cook them ahead of time. Okay? Beautiful. Hope you guys enjoy this. I added the peas near the end so that they didn't overcook. You don't want mushy, not as much as mushy, but they're discoloring. They'll get kind of a yellow pea color. And that's not very appealing. Same with the broccoli, but the broccoli takes a little bit longer to cook. So I add the broccoli and bell pepper near the end, and then the peas. Okay. We'll add a little bit of cilantro here as well. Let's put on our cilantro. switch back. You guys, it's gonna be another delicious meal. Cilantro is awesome. I don't love it on everything, but sometimes it really makes the dish. So especially here, again, if you want to leave out the broth, if you want to leave out the tamari, if you want to make your homemade garlic chili paste or just add in garlic and red pepper flakes, you can absolutely do that. Just make sure that you start with quality vegetables. You start with, or you finish with some great cilantro, and taste as you go. Make sure you have enough with lime juice. If you want to add a little bit of rice vinegar to boost up the tanginess, but also to brighten the dish without doing too much lime, that's another option. There's so many ways to make this flavorful and fit for your lifestyle. Okay, so I hope you enjoy it. I'll be back next week for another episode of Delicious Living with Katie May, where we are making vitality, flavor, and joy in the kitchen through whole plant foods. I hope you guys enjoy this recipe and have a delicious weekend. We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone. Yep.